Today I'm going to talk about Sensorium, my most recent work, an outcome, an expression of a 40-year, almost 50-year history of concern about the world ocean and what one might do. This particular work begins with a request I had from Lauren Bond, of all people, the artist, asking what I would do about saving the city of Venice. I found out you couldn't save the city of Venice, and all the money spent would just be ameliorative. What you really had to do was deal with the Mediterranean. So I asked myself, since most of our work begins with empathy and indignation, empathy for a hurt system, indignation that we hurt it in the first place. It's the affect of the artist, one might say, but by no means the only one. I find with the Mediterranean that we cannot save it. And the Mediterranean, unless we spend $1 trillion as openers, and I can't find $1 trillion as far as my eye can see. Suddenly, in the doing of the Mediterranean developed a voice. And the voice fundamentally said, if I die, by die I mean fade back and become minimally productive, I can regenerate in 10 to 20 million years. But if I die or fade back like this, so do you. And in 10 to 20 million years, you won't be here. With that in mind, and that piece of seeing built and made, I began a consideration of the world ocean. To consider the world ocean, I found that I had to think about a whole lot of things all at once and all together, like the acidification, the reduced oxygenation of the waters themselves, the reduced population of fish, the function of plastic in all things, the exploitation of all systems. There was nothing about the ocean that hadn't been hurt. Even the bottom was scraped, and fish farms were being fed in part by fish, by live fish that were ground up. And it was impossible to talk about all of this all at once. So I had a fantasy. And the fantasy was, could the world ocean itself, wasn't a fantasy, it's a belief, actually. I believe that the world ocean could be given a voice, and Sensorium would be the first expression of this voice. So now I take you to Sensorium. Sensorium begins to take shape when I commissioned my research assistant, who's also a filmographer, to create an image of the world ocean as a floor. And then to imagine it's a talking floor, and you could ask it questions. And the first question that one might ask is, where are the dead spots? And the dead spots jump up. And they are, as the world ocean says, 450 and growing. And where's the worst spot? Well, that comes up as the Mississippi-Missouri Drain Basin outfall into the Gulf of Mexico creates a 7,000 square mile dead spot, maybe 8, part of the time, that reaches the Galveston Bay. And all that becomes visible in one moment. And then I say, well, where's the safest spot? And the world ocean comes up, my nurseries, and pops up a mangrove swamp. And the world ocean says, you know, almost 20% of the species who grow here, the living forms that grow here, the beings that grow here, begin in the mango swamps, begin in the coral reefs, begin in the wetlands close to the ocean, begin in the estuaries. They need protection. And then I realize we've got to redesign this map. Putting the nurseries aside, Staying with dead spots, I begin to imagine a conversation between myself, as the world ocean, I must say, and a body of scientists. And the questions start up after everybody sees where it is and how much, and that it is increasing. You can see that they tend to be close to continental shelves, and they tend to be the outcome of eutrophic waters coming off the surface of the continents. And the scientists really understand that one of the purification methods that nature uses, that Life Web uses, is swamps and wetlands. So they pose the question, do you think wetlands can purify the dead spots? And the world ocean says, how would you do that? You have eliminated 50% and more of the wetlands of the whole planet. So the first thing to do would be to reestablish the wetlands across the whole planet. Once that was done, purification of the lands could happen, and waters from all these dead spots that are killing me at the edges can be pumped into wetlands that have been tailored to handle various kinds of pollution. And nature has the answers to all these, and you can find them, except you're too lazy, except you're too worried about where your monies will come from. There is a moment of silence. And one of the scientists I'm imagining says, well, let's imagine we had $1 trillion and we reestablished wetlands globally. Then every one of these dead spots could then become its own version of a nursery, its own version of a rehabilitation of oceanic life, fisheries, microscopic life. So what another scientist says, well, or maybe a school kid says, maybe a teacher says, or asks, well now, if we solve the dead spots, what's next? And a new map appears. It appears right there. And the ocean says, there on this map you're seeing over 5,000 ships at this moment. And every ship is dropping its wastes or making noise or otherwise interfering with the well-being of the ocean dwellers. If, for instance, every ship dropped its waste in one of these wetland repositories, I would be purified twice, once from ships dropping their wastes and once from the planetary wastes that are working so inefficiently with me. So you can begin to understand the value of this kind of a seeing, because you see the wetlands, you see suddenly the need for them, then you see the work of them, and then you see the work of them expanded. And all that is a result of conversation. It's my belief that the whole built environment of the planet is the outcome of people telling each other their desires, their stories, that is to say, a conversational variance. And thus, the world ocean begins to take that role. If you propose that the dead spots become protected areas, why so? And the world ocean produces another map, and in another map. In each case, it shows that the sanctuaries where they're protected are only 6 or 7% of the whole ocean, and that sanctuaries regenerate very quickly when stress is removed from them. And the world ocean says, protect my nurseries. The nurseries are from which all life springs in due course, in me, and then you. If I die, you die, you know. I am the mother of you. A new mapping would show the estuarial areas that are intense nurseries and other parts of the ocean that function as nurseries. And if then the world ocean says, we protect my nurseries and we protect me from the pollutions, the dead spots become protected spots. Why then we have a transoceanic pattern that did not pre-exist of regeneration. And you can't see that, and you can't think that, and you can't do that until you can see them all at once and all together, as one part tells what to do with the next. There is a deep truth to be found here. I don't know if it's a truth, and I don't know if it's deep, but I sort of feel that way. I think we have a lost by virtue of our focus on efficiencies, by virtue of our speed-ups, by virtue of our systems controls and extractions and control of people's minds, we've lost our ability to scan. I begin to imagine myself as having such an ability. Us artists do that more than most. It takes place in the mind in the absence of rationalization, in the absence of critical theory, one might say. It happens instantly, very quickly. And it happens as a consequence of scanning and seeing all the stuff all at once. And a decision is made outside of the domain of rationalization. And that's what we've lost. And that's what this seeks to reestablish. And you can see that it does. For instance, you say, well, ocean, what's your worst pattern now that we see some hope here? Ah, says the ocean, human. The worst pattern is plastic. Plastic's appearing in everything, even in your food now if you eat fish from me, and soon it will get into your food chain entirely. Do you really want your kidneys to process plastic? And you say, ocean, is there anybody doing anything about this? The ocean says, yeah, there's an ocean initiative, and new maps come up. What they show is that most of the plastics come into the ocean from rivers. And of the hundreds of rivers, 2 are the worst by far. So they also understand that they have to change the rules on land, and they have to change legislation, and they maybe even have to talk about altering the excesses of capitalism, which are extreme. Take all you can get, don't give anything back, offload the problems you face on the culture or on the ecosystem. So we take, but we don't give back. And we see big examples of that all over. The ocean finally has to say, we have to change entirely. We have to revise civilization. You have to revise civilization in such a way that human activity does what all other species do. It seeks to become a niche in the ecosystem like everything else. And when human behavior becomes a niche in the ecosystem, the life web as a whole, we survive. If it doesn't, we don't survive. But of course, the life web survives. It simplifies itself, and then it expels the human race as it would a dangerous exotic who consumes the life web itself. And so that, I think, is what's happening now. And the voice of the ocean is my counter-argument. Thank you.